She posted, "If he loved me, he'd fight for me," after giving me the silent treatment for a week. I screenshot it and sent it to her mom. She's right. I'm done fighting with my apartment listing. Her mom showed up at my door 2 hours later. I, 29M, thought I knew what love looked like until last Tuesday when everything I believed about my relationship crumbled in the span of 7 days. My girlfriend of 3 years had perfected the art of silent treatment whenever we disagreed about anything. This time, it started over something completely ridiculous. I had made dinner plans with my college buddy who was in town for one night, and apparently that meant I was prioritizing everyone else over her. She didn't say this directly, of course. Instead, she gave me that look, the one that said I should already know what I did wrong, then retreated into her fortress of silence. Day one of the silent treatment felt familiar. She moved through our shared apartment like a ghost, acknowledging my presence only when absolutely necessary. I tried the usual approaches, asking what was wrong, suggesting we talk, even bringing her favorite coffee from the place downtown. Nothing. She would look right through me as if I didn't exist. By day 3, the silence had weight to it, pressing down on every room in the apartment. I found myself walking on eggshells, trying not to make noise when I got ready for work, wondering if breathing too loudly might extend this punishment another day. She continued posting on social media, though, sharing memes about toxic relationships and screenshots of quotes about knowing your worth. Each post felt like a passive-aggressive missile aimed directly at me. Day 5 brought a new level of psychological warfare. She started cleaning obsessively, reorganizing our shared spaces in a way that erased any trace of me living there. My books disappeared from the coffee table, my jacket vanished from the back of the chair where I always left it. Even my favorite mug got buried behind all the others in the cabinet. When I asked where my things went, she shrugged and continued scrubbing the already spotless counter. By day 6, I realized something had fundamentally shifted inside me. The familiar cycle of panic and desperation I usually felt during her silent treatments had transformed into something else entirely: clarity. I started seeing our entire relationship through a different lens, remembering all the previous times she had used silence as a weapon, all the ways she controlled the emotional temperature of our home with her moods. Then came day 7, and with it, the social media post that changed everything. I was scrolling through my feed during my lunch break when I saw it. A screenshot of some relationship quote posted to her story with her own commentary added below it. The quote read something generic about fighting for love, but her addition made my blood run cold. She had written, "If he really loved me, he would fight for me." Guess that tells me everything I need to know about where I stand. I stared at my phone screen, reading those words over and over again. The audacity of it struck me like a physical blow. Here was someone who had spent 7 days treating me like I was invisible in my own home, refusing to communicate like an adult, making me feel crazy for wanting basic human acknowledgement. And she was painting herself as the victim who wasn't being fought for. Something inside me snapped, but not in the way it usually did. Instead of the familiar panic or desperate need to fix things, I felt a cold, calculating anger settle in my chest. She wanted to know if I would fight for her. She was about to find out exactly what kind of fight she had started. I took a screenshot of her story post, then opened a new message to her mother. Her mom had always been kind to me, often expressing concern about her daughter's communication issues and relationship patterns. I had never involved family in our problems before, but this felt different. This felt like war. I attached the screenshot and typed out my message carefully. I told her mom that her daughter was absolutely right. If someone loved her, they would fight for her. Then I explained that I had been fighting for 3 years, fighting to have conversations instead of silent treatments, fighting to be heard instead of ignored, fighting to build something healthy together. But I was done fighting a battle I could never win against someone who changed the rules every time. I finished the message with something that felt like the most honest thing I had written in months. I was done fighting, and I was moving out. Then I attached the apartment listing I had been secretly browsing during my lunch breaks all week, the one-bedroom place across town that represented freedom from this toxic cycle. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came faster than I expected. Her mom called within 30 minutes, her voice tight with concern. She told me she had been worried about the pattern she was seeing, had tried talking to her daughter about communication and respect in relationships. She asked if we could talk in person. said she would come by after work. I agreed, feeling strangely calm about the whole situation. For the first time in a week, I wasn't walking on eggshells or wondering what I had done wrong. I had simply matched her energy. She wanted to play games, so I had played to win. When I got home that evening, my girlfriend was in the kitchen pretending to be busy with meal prep. She glanced up when I walked in, and for a moment, I thought she might actually speak to me. Instead, she looked back down at her cutting board and continued her performance of being too important to acknowledge me. I went to the bedroom and started quietly gathering some of my things, putting them in a bag I kept hidden in the back of our closet. If her mom was coming over, I wanted to be prepared to leave if necessary. The apartment felt different now that I had made a decision, less like a prison and more like a temporary stop on my way to something better. 2 hours after I had sent that message, the doorbell rang. My girlfriend looked surprised, glancing toward the door with confusion. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her confusion turned to alarm when she saw me walking toward the door with purpose instead of the usual hesitation that came with unexpected visitors during our fights. I opened the door to find her mother standing there, her expression serious but not unkind. She greeted me warmly, then looked past me to where her daughter was standing frozen in the hallway, clearly trying to process what was happening. Her mom didn't waste time with small talk. She walked into our living room and sat down, then looked directly at her daughter and told her they needed to have a conversation about respect and consequences. She had seen the social media post, had received my message, and was not happy with what she was learning about how her daughter treated people who cared about her. The next hour was unlike anything I had ever experienced in our relationship. For the first time in 3 years, my girlfriend couldn't use silence as a weapon because her mother simply wouldn't allow it. Every time she tried to shut down or deflect, her mom called her out directly. Every time she tried to paint me as the villain, her mom redirected the conversation back to her behavior and choices. I watched as my girlfriend was forced to confront the reality of her actions, to explain why she thought silent treatment was an acceptable way to handle disagreement, to justify why she had been posting about not being fought for while actively refusing to communicate. Her mom asked her point blank if she thought this was how healthy relationships worked, if this was the kind of partnership she really wanted. The most powerful moment came when her mom asked her a simple question that cut straight to the heart of everything. If your friend told you their boyfriend was treating them the way you've been treating him, what would you tell them to do? The silence that followed wasn't the weaponized kind I had grown accustomed to. It was the silence of someone being forced to confront an uncomfortable truth about themselves. Her mom then turned to me and apologized for her daughter's behavior, said she had raised her better than this and was disappointed to see these patterns continuing into her adult relationships. She told me I seemed like a good man who deserved better, and that she wouldn't blame me if I decided this wasn't working anymore. After her mom left, my girlfriend finally broke her week-long silence. She was crying, asking why I had involved her family, saying I had embarrassed her and made her look bad. I listened to her words and realized she still didn't get it. She was more concerned about how she looked than how she had made me feel. I told her I didn't make her look bad. I had simply shown her mother exactly who she chose to be in our relationship. I explained that her own words, her own social media post, had revealed everything her mom needed to know. She had asked if I would fight for her, and I had given her the answer. The conversation that followed was the most honest one we had ever had, probably because there was nothing left to lose. I laid out 3 years of silent treatments, manipulation, emotional withholding, and the way she used my love for her as a weapon against me. I told her about the apartment I had found, about how the thought of leaving had started feeling like relief instead of loss. She tried to promise she would change, said she didn't realize how bad things had gotten, begged me not to make any permanent decisions while emotions were running high. But I had passed the point of believing in promises made during crisis. Real change happens in calm moments, through consistent actions, not in desperate attempts to avoid consequences. I told her I needed space to think, that I would stay at my brother's place for a few days while I figured out what came next. As I packed my bag, she oscillated between anger and desperation, trying every tactic she had used successfully in the past to make me stay and fight for us. But I was done fighting. She had been right about that much. Update 1. I stayed at my brother's place for 3 days, and the clarity that came with physical distance was remarkable. My phone buzzed constantly, texts, calls, social media notifications, all from her trying every angle to get me to come back and resume our normal pattern. The messages followed a predictable cycle. First came anger. I was immature for running away instead of working things out. I was proving I never really loved her if I could give up so easily. Then came bargaining. She would go to therapy. We could set up better communication rules. She would delete social media if that's what it took. Finally came desperation. She couldn't imagine life without me. She was sorry for everything. Please just come home so we could fix this together. What struck me most was that even in her apologies, she couldn't resist small digs and deflections. She was sorry I felt hurt by her actions. Sorry the situation had gotten so complicated. Sorry we couldn't seem to understand each other better. Never just sorry for what she had done. On day 3, her mom called me directly. She had been thinking about our conversation and wanted me to know she supported whatever decision I made. She also shared something that made everything click into place. This wasn't the first relationship where her daughter had used these tactics. There had been others, relationships that had ended when the other person finally got tired of being manipulated and controlled. Her mom told me she had been hoping I might be the one to help her daughter grow past these patterns, but she was beginning to realize that some people have to want to change for themselves. She thanked me for being patient as long as I had been, and told me I had her blessing to do whatever I needed to do for my own well-being. That evening, I made the call to the landlord about the one-bedroom apartment. The place was still available, and I could move in at the end of the week. As I signed the lease agreement, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, excitement about the future instead of anxiety about the next conflict. When I returned to our shared apartment to collect more of my belongings, she was waiting with what appeared to be a carefully planned presentation. She had printed out articles about healthy communication, made lists of changes she wanted to implement, even scheduled an appointment with a couples therapist for the following week. I sat and listened to her pitch, watching her perform the role of someone who had suddenly gained insight into her behavior. But there was something missing from her presentation: genuine accountability. Every point she made came with an implied caveat that I was partly responsible too, that we both needed to work on things, that relationships were complicated and required effort from both people. She was right that relationships required effort from both people. The problem was that for 3 years, I had been the only one putting in that effort, while she controlled the dynamic through strategic withdrawal and punishment. I told her I appreciated that she wanted to change, but that I was moving forward with my own plans. The lease was signed, the moving truck was booked, and I was choosing myself for the first time in our relationship. Update 2. Moving out was surprisingly emotional, not because I was sad to leave, but because I was grieving the time I had lost trying to fix something that was designed to be broken. Each box I packed represented a memory, a moment when I had chosen to stay and fight, instead of recognizing that some battles aren't worth winning. She tried one final manipulation as I was loading the last of my things. She told me she had talked to the couple's therapist, explained our situation, and the therapist had said that walking away during a rough patch was exactly the kind of thing that destroyed otherwise good relationships. She said the therapist wanted to meet with both of us to help us work through this communication breakdown. I almost laughed at the audacity. She was trying to use a professional she had spoken to for 30 minutes to validate her narrative and guilt me into staying. But I had done enough research over the past week to know that healthy relationships don't require one person to fight constantly for basic respect and communication. Instead of arguing, I simply told her that if therapy was important to her, she should definitely pursue it. Individual therapy, where she could explore why she used silence and manipulation as tools of control. I wished her genuine success in that work, but I wouldn't be participating in couples therapy for a relationship I was no longer part of. The first night in my new apartment was strange. The silence was different here. It was peaceful instead of weaponized, chosen instead of imposed. I ordered takeout from my favorite restaurant, the one we never went to because she didn't like the food, and ate it while sitting on my couch watching a movie she would have hated. For the first time in years, I wasn't monitoring someone else's mood to determine how I was allowed to feel. I wasn't parsing body language and sighs to figure out what I had done wrong. I wasn't walking on eggshells or trying to anticipate the next silent treatment. I was just existing peacefully in my own space. Over the following weeks, the texts and calls gradually decreased. She went through another cycle of anger and bargaining, but with increasing gaps between attempts. She posted cryptically on social media about people who give up too easily, about fair-weather friends who abandon ship when things get difficult, about learning who really cares about you during tough times. I didn't respond to any of it. For the first time in our relationship, I matched her energy by giving her exactly what she had given me so many times: silence. Update 3. 3 months later, I ran into her at the grocery store. She looked good, seemed to be doing well, and approached me with what appeared to be genuine warmth. She asked how I was settling into the new place, made small talk about work and mutual friends, and seemed to be making an effort to keep things light and friendly. Then, as we were wrapping up the conversation, she said something that revealed nothing had really changed in her fundamental understanding of what had happened between us. She told me she hoped we could be friends eventually, that she had learned a lot about herself over the past few months, and that maybe we could grab coffee sometime to catch up properly. The offer wasn't inappropriate or manipulative. It seemed genuine. But it also revealed that she still saw our breakup as a temporary setback rather than the natural consequence of her choices. She was approaching me the same way she had always approached our conflicts, as if time alone would heal wounds that required actual acknowledgement and change. I told her I was glad she was doing well, wished her the best, and politely declined the coffee invitation. Some chapters need to end completely for new ones to begin. As I drove home to my peaceful apartment, I thought about the social media post that had started this whole chain of events. She had been right. If someone loved her, they would fight for her. The mistake was thinking that fighting meant accepting unacceptable behavior indefinitely. Real love sometimes means fighting for someone by refusing to enable their worst tendencies. Sometimes it means stepping back and allowing consequences to teach lessons that words couldn't convey. Sometimes it means choosing your own well-being over someone else's comfort with dysfunction. I had fought for her in the truest way possible, by refusing to participate in a dynamic that was hurting both of us, even if she couldn't see it that way. 6 months later, I'm in a new relationship with someone who communicates directly when something bothers her, who sees conflict as something to work through together rather than a weapon to wield against me. The difference is stark and beautiful. We disagree sometimes, but we talk about it like adults. We don't always get along perfectly, but we don't punish each other with silence and withdrawal. Looking back, I realized that screenshot and that message to her mother weren't really about revenge. They were about finally matching someone's energy who had been manipulating me with selective communication for years. She had been broadcasting our private relationship dynamics to social media. So I simply included one more person in that conversation, someone who could provide perspective and accountability that I had been unable to create on my own. Her mother showing up at my door that day was the intervention I didn't know I needed. It gave me permission to stop fighting a battle I could never win and start fighting for something I could, my own peace and self-respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is refuse to participate in their dysfunction. Sometimes walking away is the strongest fight you can offer. And sometimes, the person who posts about not being fought for is the same person who has made fighting impossible through their own actions. I learned that real love doesn't require you to lose yourself in someone else's emotional chaos. It doesn't ask you to accept silence as communication or manipulation as affection. It doesn't demand that you prove your worth by tolerating unacceptable behavior. 3 years of silent treatments had taught me to doubt myself, to question my own reality, to believe that love meant enduring whatever someone else decided to dish out. But that social media post and the chain of events it set in motion taught me something much more valuable. That loving someone sometimes means refusing to let them treat you badly, even if that means walking away. The apartment I moved into as an escape became the foundation for rebuilding my sense of self. The silence that had been used as a weapon against me became the peace I needed to remember who I was outside of that toxic dynamic. Her mom was right that day. I did deserve better. But more importantly, I learned that I was worth fighting for, by myself, for myself. That was the fight that mattered most, and the only one I could actually win.